what happened? Like, I don't know how to do it.
You're on camera, Jen.
All right, so this will be our last special session for the challenge. Thanks for coming. So we did a section on general mobility and stretching, that kind of stuff, for postural stuff, and corrective movements for boxing. I want to do one about kickboxing too. So one of the big limiting factors on kicks is our hip mobility and flexibility, right? If you can't get your leg up to that chamber position to throw the kick, or to follow through and pivot your hip through on the round kicks, things like that, it really limits you as far as how high you can kick, how fast you can kick, how hard you can kick. Also, being able to move the off leg around as you're stepping and moving to follow through with your kicks, to come back down into your fighting stance, that kind of stuff. It makes a big difference. You got to have your hips that can move. So I got Jen here helping me because she's really, really good at this. Thank you very much, Jen. Just going over a couple of things. This will be pretty quick today. Two mobilizations for the hips, different aspects of the hips that tend to get tight, and then I want to make sure that we eliminate any kind of spasms or adhesions in there before we start class. And you can do these before your class. Come on over, use the foam roller, use the ball. Those are great for this. And then some stretches to do to maintain that mobility once you've warmed up the muscles, once you've been working for a while. So the first is the IT band. It's called the IT band. It's the iliotibial band. So the iliac bone right here on the top of the hip. It's that big fan bone. It's the equivalent of like your shoulder blade, but down here on the hips. It's the one that makes your hip kind of flare out to the side. And then the tibia, which is down here in your shin bone. We got a band of tissue, muscle and connective tissue that joins those two together. It runs right down the outside of your leg, kind of crosses over at the knee. A lot of times it gets wicked tight, wicked tight. For people who sit a lot, people who drive a lot, even for people who lift a lot. I do this every time before I do heavy squats because I always want to get that opened up and loosened up. So to do this, we're going to foam roll the IT band. We're going to start with a foam roller, lie down on the side. You can use that top foot as a support to push yourself around. So you're lying down, getting the foam roller right into the side of your hip. And then you're going to roll laterally up and down there, supporting yourself with your hands and the other foot. Again, technique-wise with this, just like we did with the rolling of the thoracic spine and the lats and everything, we're going to find, with a couple of quick sweeps to start out with, look for spots where they're tight, where there's a little bit of discomfort there. We're going to find those spots and come back to them and spend some time just hanging out on those spots with that pressure to reduce that local spasm, that local stickiness in there, loosen it up. Okay? Any questions on that? It's a very similar technique. Before, these kind of mobilizations. I have not run a set of keys, no. Again, this can also be done on the wall. So I'll show on the wall. You can, if you don't have the upper body strength or the balance stability to support yourself on the floor doing this, you can have it right there against the hip. I would actually start with it lower down, and then you're going to be able to lower yourself down into it. You're going to have to find that you move the roller around and roll parts of it at the same time, or at different times, sequentially. You won't be able to go up and down and do the whole thing like that, unless you can drop into a really deep squat, which if you can do that, you can probably just do it on the floor. Hip flexor. So the hip flexor is the muscle that pulls the leg up right here. A lot of people, it gets tight if we sit a lot. So if we're hanging out all day sitting at a computer desk or driving or whatever, this muscle tends to get tight. So when it pulls the hip up, it's somewhat connected to the IT band, but a little bit different. A lot of the hip flexor muscles actually connect to the low back right here, the back of the pelvis, run through the inside of the pelvis, come out the front and attach to the front aspect of that femur, the long bone here of the thigh. So they're pulling from the low back and back of the pelvis on this leg bone to pull that leg bone up, hip flexion. Because of that, they're really hard to get at. They're deep in there. They're basically invisible, right? From the outside, you'll never really see your hip flexors very well. They're not a muscle you're going to build up for bodybuilding very much, right? You know this.
It's your flame in the oven. That's your slowest. And then the iliacus, you have to get it, you have to reach the side.
Exactly. Really the only way you're really going to see the hip flexors is with an autopsy, and we're not going to do those here, right? Not that kind of club. So we want to get with a softball much more pinpointed pressure than we could with the roller, right? We're going to get that right in front what you got is the inguinal crease, right? It's the crease right where the hip, the leg part of the hip meets the pelvic part of the hip, and it folds inward. And right in there is where you want to get that softball, and roll it right in there. You can press with your hands standing. Another good way is, this is a great one to do on the wall. It just looks super dirty, right?
Yeah,
So
Can you demonstrate it, please,
you're
Jen?
going to be going right up against the wall.
Make me do this right.
Yeah, let me get the
And
video
then
of
you've got
this.
to roll your hips around right up on the wall.
Oh my god.
And you're digging in.
Remember what I do for you guys.
The alternative to this, which I won't make you do right now, is you do the same thing on the floor. You can use deeper pressure on the floor, and it looks even worse.
Actually, could you show that,
Wonder what you're
please?
doing.
Because I want to make sure I do it right.
So do it here because we know what you're doing, and we make sure you don't get in trouble.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all want to see it on the floor. Yeah.
Right. There you go, there you go. And see, she gets her hip out to the side, so she's really opening it up and getting that ball in there nice and deep. There you go. So once we mobilize these, right, we do our rollers, we do our softball. These are things you can do before the session, before the kickboxing class, before exercising. Like if you're doing squats, I highly recommend doing the IT band and maybe the hip flexors too, even if you're doing any kind of heavy leg workout too. We're going to do some stretches. 3 stretches we're going to go over today. First is a pigeon pose. So a pigeon pose we do sometimes at the end of class is lying on the floor. One knee is across and the outside of the foot is on the floor, as you can see here in Jen, and she's wearing her weight down onto her hip. What that's going to do is it's going to pull the hip across the body and rotate it inward. Your piriformis muscle, it's a muscle that runs again from the back, the lower back, and it attaches on the back of the femur, and it's responsible for rotating that hip outward. It's one that tends to get spasmy in anybody that has had any kind of lower back issues, and it can actually, it runs right near where some of those nerves are that you know the legs. People get sciatica, right? That's the muscle spasming in part. It's one of the explanations that we know about. The muscle spasming, touching off that nerve that runs down and the electric shocks down the legs. That could be one of the things that do it. This stretch can be helpful to sometimes relieve that for some people. But in general, we want to keep this muscle nice and
I
loose.
suffered from this, and you think something's wrong in your calf.
Right.
You have no idea where it's coming from, and then you go, well, it's IT band or something like that. And it takes a long time to figure it out. Usually, you can find it by finding a point tenderness deep in your body.
And with this one, you can use the softball too to roll around on the butt cheek, sitting on the butt cheek. Actually, let's show that real quick.
I don't know why I volunteered for this. What am I doing?
Sitting on, so just sit, put both legs in front of you, put both legs in front of
Crossballs are really good too. They're
you.
hard.
And just sit on it, right on the butt cheek.
I just want to make sure I get audio on this.
There
If
you
Jen's
go.
sitting on a
and
ball,
you're just gonna
to
roll it
stretch.
around so it's on your hip bone, right on the sit bone. The one that we balance on, we're doing like E6 and things like that. So like right in the middle of the butt cheek. If you, again with this one, especially because there's those nerves running through there, if you start feeling the electric shocking pain or burning pain, stop doing this, move to a different spot, because then you're right on the nerve. You don't want to be right on the nerve.
And if it's acutely exacerbated, don't do
Good
that.
job, Jen.
If it hurts,
Yeah.
stop.
Take a couple weeks off and ice it. That's what I did.
So the next stretch, Spider-Man stretch. See this in my class? I used to always do it when I was doing kickboxing classes too. So you start out kind of in your lunge position, and you bring one hand up into the outside, or one foot up into the outside of that hand. And then the other leg is back. You can have it with the flat of the top of the foot on the floor, or you can keep the toe up there if it's more comfortable for you. But I want to get the knee down. That's one of the things I want to get. I want to get the knee resting on the ground a little bit. So you're not just taking up as much weight with muscular tension. So right here, she's letting her hips sink down. She's not hyperextending her lower back coming up. She's just letting her back stay pretty neutral, letting the hips sink down. She's gonna feel this in this hip flexor right here in the front. And on the other side, you're gonna get a stretch through the groin and the hamstring on the inside because that's pulling the hip up. So this is a kill 2 birds with 1 stone kind of stretch. You can do both sides like this, and then to deepen it and give it a little bit more, you can take that left hand up, take the left hand up, reach, and twist back, just like that. And that's going to deepen that stretch on the groin side and on the hip flexor side. That takes time to build up to that degree of flexibility and balance right here. But that's the ultimate, that's the progression of the Spider-Man stretch. One last stretch, the Russian baby maker. So the Russian Baby Maker is a great stretch for people that do heavy weights and lifting and squats. It's also a great way to get those hips open. This is another one you can do before the class too, a little bit dynamic. So you're going to get down to a squat, you're going to grab just above the ankles and kind of stick the butt back and up and just hang out down here. The idea is using the elbows and the upper arms to push the thighs out. You're trying to spread the hips out to the side, not so much the knees, but we're trying to push the hips apart and stretch that hip bone out, the leg bone out from its hip side. So that's the Russian Baby Maker. Hang out there, 30 seconds with any of these stretch, and this one the same. Repeat 2 to 3 times maybe, okay? Any questions on any stretches, any mobilization? Cool, awesome. Thanks for coming, guys. This is the last session for the challenge until we go to our next iteration of the challenge next month. We'll be running these again. Thanks, Jen.
What a team player.